successors became weaker and weaker. And lastly, Skandagupta was not able to hold the empire properly. And the successors of Skandagupta were even more weaker. This led to disruption or breaking up of the empire, and the Gupta Empire was wiped out. It faced the same fate as the Mauryan Empire. The Hun people, the Hunas, are known as the Mongolian tribes, they invaded the Gupta territory and they caused lot of damage by plundering and killing the people. This was one of the main reasons why the Gupta Empire had declined. Now, after the downfall of Gupta Empire in the later years, India entered a period of political chaos. That is, there was no kingdom strong enough to hold the unity of all the small kingdoms. So, the empire split into many small kingdoms who were constantly at war with each other. And during this period, the Huns used it as an excellent excuse to keep invading India. This created a dark period in Indian history. After the decline of Gupta Empire, as we already learned, many independent dynasties arose in North India. Now, amidst all this confusion and conflicts, a new power slowly started rising in the eastern part of Punjab on the bank of river Saraswati. This power or this dynasty came to be known as the Pushyabhoti dynasty of Taneshwar. Children, so today let us learn about Pushyabhoti dynasty of Taneshwar. The founder of this royal house was Pushpabhoti or Pushyabhoti. Because of that only the dynasty got its name. Now his authority was limited to a very small area around Taneshwar. In the course of time, slowly the Pushyabhotis of Taneshwar became very powerful. You can see on the map what are the areas they brought under their control. And by the close of 6th century, King Prabhakara Vardhana of Pushyabhoti dynasty became powerful enough to call himself as Maharaja Raja. He has been described in Madhuvana copper plates as one whose fame spread beyond the four seas and to whom submitted the other kings. Now, Prabhakara Vardhana's main problem was fighting against the Hun invasion. He is also been described as a person who's like a lion to the Huna deer, a burning fever to the king of the Indus land, and a troubler of the sleep of the Gujrats. Later on, Prabhakara Vardhana also captured Gandhara, the Lathas, and captured Malwa. So, who was the most famous king after Pushyabhuti? It was King Prabhakara Vardhana. You can see on the map, children, what are the places which was under the Pushyabhuti dynasty. King Prabhakara Vardhana had three children. Two Prince Rajyavardhana and Harshavardhana, and one daughter Rajyashri. So, who were the two sons? Rajyavardhana and Harshavardhana, and daughter Rajyashri. Rajyavardhana and Harshavardhana were taught all the soldierly professions of horsemanship, archery, swords play, and so on. And their sister Rajashri was learnt in music, dance, and other accomplishments. Rajashri, when she was very young, was given in marriage to Grihavarma, who was the prince of mockery of Kanauj. So, whom did Rajashri marry? She married Grihavarma, the mockery prince of Kanauj. Soon after the marriage of his daughter Rajashri, the old king Prabhakara Vardhana had to face another invasion of the Huns in the north. So he sent his eldest son Rajavardhana, who was only 18 years old, to fight against the Huns. At that time, the younger son Harsha, who was only 15, followed his brother to help him with a cavalry force. But before Harsha could join his brother, he got a news that his father, the old king, was very sick. By the time he rushed back to Taneshwar, he found that his father had died. There was a lot of sorrow in the kingdom. Rajavardhana, meanwhile, was able to defeat the Huns and came back victorious, but he himself was wounded. He was wounded in the battle. When he just came back, another tragic situation waited for them. King Grihavarma of Kanauj, who was the husband of their sister Rajashri, was killed by Devagupta, the king of Malwa. We have already learnt before that Malwa had been captured by Prabhakara Vardhana. Now the king of Malwa, Devagupta, killed Grihavarma, and Rajashri was captured and thrown into prison. The moment Rajavardhana came to know about this, he took a huge cavalry force and went to Kanauj to save his sister. But remember, he was already wounded in the battle when he was fighting against the Huns. But somehow he managed to defeat Devagupta and kill him. But Devagupta's friend Shashank of Goda treacherously lured Rajavardhana by accepting his friendship, took him to his place and killed him. Thus ended the life of Rajavardhana, who was not able to free his sister from the prison. The kings of Malwa and Goda had joined into an alliance and they killed the new king of Taneshwar. I hope you understood, children. It's just like a story. Think of it like a story. When Harsha came to know how his brother was treacherously killed, his sorrows knew no bounds. All the ministers of the kingdom, who knew how worthy Harsha was to become the king, forced him and made him accept to take up the throne. Thus Harsha, who was just 16 years old, was forced to ascend the throne of Taneshwar in the year 606 CE. And he had to go and capture Kanauj also, which was in the hands of the enemies because his brother-in-law had died. Slowly Harsha united both the kingdoms of Taneshwar and Kanauj and shifted his capital to Kanauj. Thus, Harsha started his Harshavardhana dynasty under a unified capital. You can see his extent on the screen. The first most important work he did was he went and searched and located his sister Rajashri, who was wandering in the forest of Vidya Parvata, and brought her back to reinstate with him. Harshavardhana, after ascending the throne, managed to defeat Shashank of Goda and unified Goda also into his empire. And he built a big army and he went on with his conquest of capturing Kashmir and Sindh. Then he turned his attention towards South India and he took a very large army and invaded South India. But when he arrived on the banks of river Narmada, you can see on the map river Narmada, when he arrived there he had to face Imadi Pulikesi II, who was the Chalukya ruler who was ruling over Karnataka in South India. Imadi Pulikesi was a very strong warrior and he defeated Harshavardhana on the banks of river Narmada and forced him to retreat back to North India. This particular battle has a lot of significance because number one, it stopped Harsha's invasions into South India, and Harsha is also the first ruler to be defeated by a South Indian ruler. Thus, you can see in the map when you're seeing the Pushyabhoti dynasty, it doesn't extend into South India, but the dynasty is pertaining only to North India. Who defeated Harsha, children? Imadi Pulikesi II. Where did he defeat Harsha? Yes, on the banks of the river Narmada. We learnt about how Harsha came to throne, what is his military conquests. Now let us learn about the contributions of Harshavardhana in the field of literature. All the information about Harsha we receive from the source which is known as Harsha Charita. This Harsha Charita was written by Bana Bhatta, who was a court poet of Harsha. The complete source is all about the conquest, how Harsha ascended the throne. All these are clearly written in Harsha Charita. Now, Harshavardhana himself, apart from being a great warrior, was also a poet and a writer. He has written 3 plays in Sanskrit language: Priyadarshika, Ratnavali, and Nagananda. What were the 3 plays, children? Priyadarshika, Ratnavali, and Nagananda. And what was the book written by Bana Bhatta? Harsha Charita. Let us talk about the religious contribution of Harsha. Now, in his religion, Harsha represented a kind of liberal spirit, which was the best. His ancestors were all Shaivites. They prayed to Lord Shiva, and his father was an ardent devotee of the Lord's Sun. And his brother and sister were all Buddhist. So Harsha became a devotee of all 3. He prayed to Lord Shiva, Surya, and Buddha. In the later part of his reign, Harsha became a total follower of Buddhism. He followed the Mahayana form of Buddhism, where they prayed to statues of Lord Buddha. And there is also a suggestion that maybe he became a staunch follower of Buddhism due to his friend and the Chinese traveler Yuan Swang. Now, Yuan Swang was also called as the master of law. In the year 643, Harsha held a great religious assembly in his capital at Kanauj on the banks of river Ganga. Now, the purpose of this assembly was to highlight the teachings of Buddha. 3,000 Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhists, 3,000 Brahmins and Jains, and 1,000 Buddhist scholars from the University of Nalanda attended this assembly. Harsha himself proposed the name of Yuan Swang to take the chair. The subject of this particular assembly was related to Mahayana Buddhism, and it continued for 23 days. Where was this religious assembly held, children? It was held in his capital, Kanauj. Now, after this Kanauj assembly, it was followed by another spectacular assembly at Prayaga in the same year, which year? 643. While Kanauj assembly was for exponenting Buddhism, Prayaga assembly was established for giving charities to the people of all classes. This kind of assembly was called as Maha Moksha Parishad, where Harsha gave up lot of the important things to the poor people like money, jewels. He even gave up his own personal jewels like his rings and studs and chains to the people. So these two assemblies are very important. The conference at Kanauj and the conference at Prayag. When we talk about Harshavardhana, it is very important to talk about Nalanda University. Nalanda University was one of the first universities in the world. Children, we Indians are blessed by having the first university in the world. It was founded as early as 5th century. And it is said that even Lord Buddha had visited this Nalanda University. Now, some of the buildings in this university were constructed by Ashoka the Great. So you can just see how old Nalanda University is or was. Now, this is an indication that Buddhist learning took place very early in India. As you can see on the screen, that complex was built with red bricks, and the ruins or the broken forms of this particular complex itself is running to 14 acres. During its peak in the 7th century, the Nalanda University had 10,000 students and 2,000 teachers. Just imagine, children. It attracted scholars and students from China, Greece, and Persia, and many places. The library of Nalanda was known as Dharmagunj, or the Mountain of Truth, and it had all the excellent knowledge about Buddhism. Its collection is supposed to comprise of hundreds and thousands and volumes of books. And there were 3 main library buildings which were 9 stories tall, and they were known as Ratna Sagara, the sea of jewels. Now, the different kinds of curriculum and courses were from different fields like Buddhism, Hinduism, sacred literature, secular literature, foreign, native, and students studied science, astronomy, medicine, and logic, metaphysics, philosophy, yoga, Veda, and all the scriptures of Buddhism. Even foreign philosophy were taught there. The most important thing, children, Nalanda University did not collect any fees from the children. The boarding, the lodging, and the education was totally free to the people who wanted to learn. It had 8 schools and 3 big libraries. How to maintain? For that, the university collected the revenue from 400 villages. Harshavardhana was one of the chief patrons of this university. He had given many villages and grants and money to the university. Can you name one famous person from this university whom we have learnt before? He is a very important person in history. Can you remember, children? Yes, Vishnugupta was also known as Chanakya, a learned person from Nalanda University. Unfortunately, we don't have this university now. We only have the broken building because this university was burnt and destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khalji in 1193. This great library with all its excellent texts is lost forever as it was burnt and the Mughals set fire to it. And some people say that it took 3 months for the burning to subside. Thus ended a wonderful university. If it existed even now, we'd have had lot of ancient texts to learn from. All this information about Nalanda University is clearly written in Yuan Swang's book. The history of Harsha can never be complete without referring to Yuan Swang. Among all the foreign travelers who visited India in ancient times, no one is more famous or more celebrated than this Chinese pilgrim. Rightly, he has been described as the prince of all the pilgrims. Let us learn about Yuan Shuang. He was born in China in 600 CE. After becoming a Buddhist monk at the age of 20, he wanted to learn more and more about Buddhism. But he felt that without a visit to India, it would never be fulfilled. So, when he was 30 years old, he secretly left China and reached India through the various passes. In 630 CE, he reached India. He wanted to visit all the sacred places which was connected with the life of Buddha, and he wanted to learn about Buddhism through his study. So during his travel, he covered many places and he keenly observed the social, religious, political, and cultural and economic conditions of our country. He visited Kashmir and Punjab, then Kapilavastu, Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, and so on. He even studied in University of Nalanda. He has written about Nalanda University in his book. He traveled through the Deccan Plateau, Orissa and Bengal, and he almost went to every part of India. Harsha admired him a lot because of his deep devotion to Buddha and became a very close friend of Yuan Shuang. He even honored him in the Kannauj religious assembly. Remember, he made him the chairman of it. And he also invited Yuan Shuang to attend the Prayag assembly. Now, after spending 14 years of his life in India, Yuan Shuang wanted to return back to China. The emperor made the Harsha, that is, he is the emperor, he made elaborate arrangements for the safe return of Yuan Shuang. When Yuan Shuang left India, he took with him 150 pieces of the bodily relics of Buddha, a large number of Buddha images in gold, silver, and sandalwood, and the most important 657 volumes of valuable manuscripts. All this he carried home to China by 20 horses. Back in his home in China, he set about himself and he translated all the 657 volumes. This helped the Chinese to understand more about Buddhism, and now you know that Buddhism is the state language of China. He had to take up the help of 74 Buddhist monks to help him to translate so many works. He was indeed a great ambassador of peace between China and India, and Harsha also sent an ambassador from India to the Chinese court. Yuan Shuang has recorded all his observation in his book called Si Yu Qi. Now, this book is an excellent source to understand about the different political and economic conditions of India, especially during Harshavardhana's rule. After Harsha's death, the Pushyabhoti dynasty declined. The main reason was that Harsha did not have any sons to carry on the empire, and the second was there was no unity after his death, no strong emperor to rule. And slowly, the entire Pushyabhoti dynasty and North India broke up into many small Hindu kingdoms, later on known as the Rajput kingdoms of North India. Children, we have completed Harshavardhana. So please take out your classworks and write the points to remember. Pushyabhoti dynasty. Harshavardhana was the most popular king of this dynasty. He was only 16 when he ascended the throne. After the death of his father, Prabhakaravardhana, his elder brother Rajyavardhana ascended the throne. His sister Rajashri was married to Grahavarma of Mokri dynasty. An evil king of Malwa, Devagupta, killed Grahavarma and imprisoned Rajashri at Kanauj. Rajyavardhana defeated the army of Malwa and killed Devagupta, but was killed by Shashank of Gauda, the friend of Devagupta. Harshavardhana killed Shashank and located his sister in the forest of Vidyaparvata. He took over the Mokri kingdom of his brother-in-law, combined both kingdoms with Kanauj as the capital city. He also captured Kashmir and Sindh regions. He invaded South India. When he arrived at the banks of river Narmada, he was defeated by the Chalukya ruler of Karnataka, Imadi Pulikesi II. Harshavardhana was not only a warrior but also a poet. He wrote 3 plays in Sanskrit, namely Priyadarshika, Ratnavali, and Nagananda. Harshavardhana supported education and donated liberally to ancient Nalanda University. He organized religious conferences in Kanauj and Prayag. Huanswang, it's a subheading, children. Huanswang was a famous Chinese traveler. He visited India 1400 years ago. He traveled in India for around 15 years and studied Buddhist literature. He had stayed in the court of Harshavardhana for many years. He has recorded his experiences in India in book C. U. Ki, which means the record of the Western Kingdom. Nalanda University is a subheading, children. Nalanda University, which was in the present Bihar, was a popular university for 6 centuries since Gupta period. It was the most famous university of ancient times. Students came from places like China, Japan, etc. to study here. It had 8 schools and 3 big libraries. Though Buddhism was the major subject of the study, subjects like yoga, Veda, medicine, and others were also taught. Huanswang spent many years in this university. Let us do home assignments, children. Fill in the blanks. First, the dynasty which became prominent after the Guptas was dash. Second, the capital of this dynasty was dash. Third, Rajashri married dash of Mokri dynasty. Fourth, Harshavardhana was defeated by dash of Chalukyas of South India. Fifth, Banabhatta wrote dash, which is an excellent source of details of Harshavardhana's conquest and administration. Sixth, Nalanda University was in the present state of dash. Answer the following questions. First, name the first famous king of Pushyaboti dynasty. Second, list the 3 plays written by Harshavardhana. Third, who was the famous Chinese pilgrim who visited India during Harshavardhana's period? Fourth, name the famous ancient North Indian university which received patronage from Harshavardhana. Answer the following in detail. First, write few lines on Huanswang. Second, write a short note on Nalanda University. Children, we need to practice the map work of Asia. So now, in the following slides, I will explain to you how to identify the places of Asia on the map. So before you see this video, please take out your atlas and keep it ready. Children, we have already learnt the different places of Asia when we were doing the Asia lesson. Now you can observe on the screen numberings given. You should look at these numbers and you should try to identify which physical feature I am trying to put. You can see the water bodies. So the numbering is there in the water bodies from which you can identify. There are few rivers like 1, 2, 3 are the water bodies. 7 and 8 is again the water body. 9 and 10 again water bodies. 4, 5 and 6 are rivers. 11 is the line which is separating Asia from Europe. So take your time, observe the map properly and try to identify. Don't immediately see the answers. Try to identify on your own what these places could be. Okay, now we'll see the answers, children. 1. Arctic Ocean. 2. Pacific Ocean. 3. Indian Ocean. 4 is River Ob. 5. River Lena. 6. River Ganga. 7. The Bay of Bengal. 8. Arabian Sea. 9. Caspian Sea. 10. Persian Gulf. And 11. Ural Mountains. So please check whether you have identified the correct physical feature. If not, please correct yourself and learn. On this map again, there are some markings. Now we had learnt about the physical divisions of Asia. Think of that and try to identify, children. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Try to identify. Here are the answers. I hope you have identified them properly. Northwestern lowlands, central highlands, southern plateaus, island groups and Himalayas. Are you able to identify? Northwestern lowlands, central highlands, southern plateaus, island groups and Himalayas. The river plains, we have already identified the rivers. This is a political map. Here you have to identify the areas which I have marked. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Look into your atlas first and try to identify. These are the answers. 1. India. 2. China. 3. Myanmar. 4. Saudi Arabia. And 5. Siberia. First India. Second China. Third Myanmar. Fourth Saudi Arabia. And fifth Siberia. On this map, you can observe that I have given you the places which we have marked in all the 3 maps before this. So you can compare and learn how to write the places, children. You have all the places which have already been marked in the last 3 maps. First, you try to identify on your own, and only then you compare to find out whether your answers are correct. Thank you, children.